Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today, I am here with Michelle Ngome. Michelle is doing a webinar with us on March 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Finding Value Before a Crisis: How Workplace DEI Drives Revenue and Prevents Incidents. Michelle is the founder of Line 25 Consulting, and I thought that I would bring us together today to talk about the webinar and some of the topics of the webinar that are coming up. So, Michelle, let's jump right into it. My first question for you: can you tell me a little bit about the correlation between DEI and an organization's revenue?
Yes, so the business case for DEI and revenue goes back to the consumer spending. So according to Nielsen Media, African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, each group spends at least $1 trillion in consumer spending. So of course, that's a lot of our everyday products, food, um, beauty products, just those natural consumer goods. Also, if we look into our LGBTQ community on a global level, they're spending $3 trillion. Muslim Americans are spending $100 billion. And then we have people with disabilities, neurodiversity. So we have all of these communities of colors and diverse communities that are spending money, right? And of course, with that, their earning potential is increasing as well. And of course, some numbers can be skewed because of COVID over the past 2-3 years. But for the most case, their earning potential is increasing. People are buying houses, assets are growing, and there's consumer spending. So with that, companies want to tap into those demographics, right? As marketers, or I'm a marketer, we're always marketing products and services, because we need to drive revenue to sustain our business and things of that nature. But what we don't see is the targeted marketing efforts to those various communities, right? And I think that's when the diversity in marketing plays, because it's like, how can you be inclusive on your marketing efforts, showing representation, or just do targeting marketing to those segmented groups. And of course, if they're buying your products, your services, things of that nature, that's going to help with the sustainability of your business, which is revenue, which is cash flow, which we're trying to find ways to stay afloat. So at least from what I do, my work, that's my business case when it comes to diversity and revenue.
Okay, awesome. So, what do you think are the most important pillars of DEI to implement in order to prevent HR incidents at an organization?
Yeah, I would say it's probably our favorite training, right? Unconscious bias.
Hmm.
And even though I don't focus on unconscious bias, I'm dabbling with it a little bit, once again, from the marketing perspective, but that is the foundation, unconscious bias. And with that training, it's good because we have to be aware and show empathy, right? And I think lots of times it's like, oh, I know this stuff, I know not to do it. But what happens is when we're amongst our peers, we get lax, we become very casual, and we're having fun. But what happens when that other person walks by, or that other person pops in the Zoom, right? Or
Hmm.
you thought you were on mute, but you're not, so it's just little things that we're trying to figure out in this virtual and in-person world. But we need to be mindful of our surroundings, our language, and of course, people, this is a very sensitive time right now. So people are going through things. So it's like, how can you express empathy towards others? And I think when we do that, just remaining mindful, we're able to create a better work environment, which will minimize some workplace incidents.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So, with that being said, what steps do you think organizations can take today to start building a strong DEI program in their business?
Yeah, so most people start with the DEI officer, right? And I really believe anyone can do DEI work. You just have to equip them. So, with that, obviously, with job descriptions, there's a lot of emphasis with education and experience. But let's take it a step further. What is their lived experience, right? Their lived experience. What can they bring to the company that no one can see on paper, right?
Yeah.
One thing I like to say is we do tend to look at white men as privileged, but you never know. This white man may have a sibling that has Down syndrome or has a disability. And because of that, he's more empathetic to people with disabilities. And that's something that's priceless that can be carried into the workplace. So let's ask questions to understand this individual's lived experience. So after that, um, survey your team, right? It could be regular surveys, it could be group calls, focus groups, one on one calls. Some things may need to be anonymous. So, how can you create that safe space that people feel encouraged to speak up without fear of losing their job? Once you get those responses, strategize. Okay, what's the plan? How
Yeah.
are we going to move forward? What's going to be priority? And this is something that you're going to create milestones. Okay, this year we're going to focus on this, or this is our 5 year plan, right? We're going to recruit XYZ. We're going to promote XYZ. We're going to pay
Yeah.
everyone a fair living wage, right? So, what is from the response of your employees? Figure out what's priority and how you can address each of those issues. Provide solutions within a reasonable time frame. And then the last thing, when it comes to the DEI officer, the leader, usually that's a team of one. But how can we give that person the manpower and the financial resources that will allow them to do their job, right? Because this is a lot of work, really, depending on the organization. And a lot of companies have employee resource groups or business resource groups. Also, how can you equip those individuals that are leading, usually a volunteered based
Yeah.
ERG, right? Because we're all tired, whether it's in or out of work. We all have a lot on our plate, right? So, how can we equip these individuals that are doing the good work inside the organization as well as outside of the organization?
I love that answer. That's fantastic. Okay, final question. How can organizations measure the impact of their DEI initiatives and measure the impact that that is having on the employee experience as well as their bottom line?
That's good. So, first things first, your intention has to meet impact, right?
Yes.
So, what is your intention? What is your goal? And how impactful do you want to be? I truly believe you have to start with where you are, start with what you have, and possibly grow into that. So, with that being said, usually when we think about diversity, we think about hiring, we think about all things HR, we think about recruiting. So, that can be one thing, right? So, where are you recruiting at? Here in America, we have historical black colleges and universities, HBCUs. We have predominantly, or mainly in Texas, we have HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions. There's also colleges that are focused on Asian American and Pacific Islanders, right? Try recruiting from some of those institutions. Also, that's usually entry level, but partnering with different organizations that can help fill your mid level and executive level talent pipeline. So you have to diversify your recruiting options. Also, we can go to salary. Really analyze, are women getting paid the same amount that the men are in the organization? When we go title for title, years of experience in and out of the organization, right?
Yeah.
Is it dollar for dollar? What can you do to, bump up? Let me say this. What can you do to create equitable pay, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just bump
Mm-hmm.
up, but
Yeah.
equitable pay, for your current staff as well as the newcomers. Also, there's supplier diversity. We're in the great resignation right now. Everyone doesn't want to be a full-time employee, right? So, what are you creating that allows for contract work, right? Part-time, full-time, what are you doing to support the gig economy? Is it a fair process? How are you getting that process out to people? What are the qualifications? So I think those are some of the basic things that organizations can do when it comes to finding metrics, tracking metrics on what does diversity look like for the organization. And of course, there's donations, there's scholarships. You can create a fellowship, which is great for once again for talent pipeline, going from intern to entry level, and maybe even an internal leadership program. There's so much that can be done. You just have to figure out what is best for your organization, which goes back to the previous question, the manpower and the financial resources to get the job done.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I could not agree more, and I love talking to you about this stuff. So I'm super stoked for the webinar because it's basically going to be an hour of discussing all of this. So once again, if you would like to join us on March 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Michelle is going to be giving a whole webinar on finding value before a crisis, how workplace DEI drives revenue and prevents incidents. Michelle, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Do you have any final words to say before we go?
Sign up, tune in. It's going to be
Yeah.
fun. I love talking about this, and I try to make it very practical and engaging for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fantastic. So thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.